3rd, 2024 meeting of the San Mateo County Board of Education will come to order. As is our practice, this meeting will be recorded. The board provides remote access for members of the public and welcomes community members joining in person and remotely. The board is following the requirements of Assembly Bill 2449, which enables remote participation by board members only under specific circumstances. We use simultaneous interpretation in Spanish for those attending virtually through the end of public comment. Translation will continue further into the meeting if people are utilizing the channel. Thank you to our interpreters, Evita Martinez-Kelly and Paulina Vasiliev, for joining us remotely. For meeting attendees wishing to access the Spanish translation channel on Zoom, click on the interpretation button on the menu bar. We ask all speakers to be mindful of the Spanish interpretation and please speak slowly and clearly. I ask board members to please speak directly into the microphone and remind speakers wearing masks to please remove their masks when speaking in order to be heard clearly by all attendees. Right, item 1B is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Gerard and a second by trustee Lempert. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes with a vote of 7-0. And the agenda for tonight's meeting has been approved. Item 2 is public comment. Guidelines for public comment are available on the SMCOE website and in board docs, as well as on the table outside the boardroom in both English and Spanish. If there are speakers who require Spanish interpretation, our interpreters, Ms. Martinez-Kelly and Ms. Vasiliev, will interpret following each speaker's comments. At this time, members of the public may provide comment for topics not included on the approved agenda. The Board of Education does not act on any matter that has not been agendized except under limited circumstances as permitted by law. It is the policy of the County Board to refer matters raised in this forum to the superintendent for investigation and/or action where appropriate. Superintendent McGee, do we have any comments submitted prior to the meeting?
We do not.
Thank you. Speakers are invited to make live comment and have 3 minutes to speak. The board's executive assistant, Jennifer Perna, will keep the time and advise when a speaker has 30 seconds left. Please keep within the time limit. To make a comment over Zoom, members of the public may use the raised hand feature, and instructions for using this feature are provided as an attachment in the board packet. Once the hand is raised, please wait to be acknowledged by Superintendent McGee. Are there any members of the public attending remotely who wish to make a comment at this time?
I just lost my Zoom window. Here it comes. I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Members of the public may also provide live comment in person. Superintendent McGee, are there any cards submitted?
No, we have no cards.
Okay, no problem. Public comment addressing a specific agenda item will be heard after the board's questions, comments, and discussion on the item. If members of the public wish to speak to a specific agenda item, please use the raised hand feature when the item is announced, or if in person, please submit a card in advance of the item. All right, item 3A is introduction of Becky Steffen, ED Coordinator, School Safety and Student Supports, Educational Services Division. Coordinator Steffen.
Okay. Good evening, Board President Bonini, members of the board, and Superintendent McGee. My name is Becky Steffen, and it's an honor to be here this evening to introduce myself as the newest member of the Safe and Supportive Schools Department, serving as the coordinator of School Safety and Student Supports. I have been an advocate for high-quality, equitable whole child education and multi-tiered supports over the past 24 years as an educator and school administrator across the states of Massachusetts, Texas, Pennsylvania, and California. 6 of those years were as an elementary music teacher, 7 as an elementary and middle school assistant principal, and 11 years as an elementary principal. A passion for creating and sustaining effective equity-centered systems and supports for students with disabilities, students in emotional distress, and for the social emotional wellness of all students, for them to be able to fully access their education, led me to the path of the principalship. Throughout my years as a school administrator, I've had the privilege of working collaboratively day in and out with staff and larger school community to develop and implement school safety practices, refine and increase student-centered safety supports, train staff, engage with families and agencies, identify present needs around school safety and feeling safe, and to seek out the voices and needs of students and staff around safety and wellness, especially from those who have been historically marginalized or unable to speak for themselves. This past spring, at the end of a student council meeting, a student asked me, "Why are you leaving? Must you go?" And I said, "It's time for me to support multiple schools and students. Is that okay?" She immediately smiled and said, "Yes, I think that's a great idea." My response to her ultimately led me here, to the San Mateo County Office of Education. When students feel physically and emotionally safe and well, their voice is heard, and feel connected to their school community with caring, skilled, and trained adults who also feel the same, they are able to focus on learning and exploring, creating, imagining, developing, and growing. In my role here as the coordinator of safety and student supports, I'll be focusing on in-county training for the Big Five, reviewing comprehensive school safety plans for compliance and future feedback, developing the training for campus supervisors, and crisis response. I'm excited and extremely committed to this work. Thank you, Superintendent McGee. Associate Superintendent Chris Schaus, Executive Director of Safe and Supportive School, Ben Gonzalez, and the fantastic Safe and Supportive Schools team for the very warm welcome and the opportunity to be part of this meaningful work of school safety for the students and staff in the districts and schools within our county.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, item 4A. Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. Item 4A is the October 2024 Employee of the Month, Alvin Ma, Financial Analyst, Internal Business Services Division. Will Alvin please join me in the center of the room? Okay. Hello? Okay, it's working. All right. Hey, Alvin. All right. Each month, the board and the superintendent recognize an employee for providing outstanding service. For the month of October, we recognize you, Alvin, Financial Analyst in the Internal Business Services Department. Alvin works closely with the county office's P3 and Early Learning Services Department, providing the team with valuable financial support. He has quickly learned and mastered all of the department's financial components. Alvin's support has been invaluable in helping the department meet compliance requirements with expenditure reports. He consistently meets deadlines for financial reporting and ensures that financial information is always available on schedule. That's fantastic. With Alvin's problem-solving skills and proactive approach, the Internal Business Services and P3 Early Learning Services departments have been able to navigate through the tracking and reporting requirements for new state funding streams. He has also been very accommodating and flexible, especially since reporting requirements in systems are often changing. The P3 Early Learning Services Department would not be able to sustain the flow of millions of dollars in revenue for the county's youngest learners without your support, Alvin. P3 Early Learning Services Department staff enjoy working with Alvin and consider him part of their team. They especially appreciate his calm demeanor, which makes him approachable. We are proud of our County Office of Education staff, and we're pleased to recognize you, Alvin, for your outstanding work. Congratulations on being named Employee of the Month for October 2024. Would you like to say a few words?
A little bit nervous. So I'm incredible honor to be recognized as the Employee of the Month. So I want to take this opportunity to thank SMCOE for giving me a chance to contribute to the wonderful community, and it has been a privilege to be part of the organizations, and then I was truly grateful to make contribution to the work we do. So second, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to my leadership team, which is Minette and Marianne, for their support and guidance. And I especially want to thank our internal business team and the early learning service team. It's been a pleasure to work with those dedicated people, and working alongside all of you is like rewarding experience that I enjoy every day. So thank you guys again, and I'm looking forward to continue for the meaningful journey with you guys, with you together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your words. We have this gift for you. And also if you want to take the paper, you can have that. All right. Thank you. Congratulations. It's like my dad is talking. Okay. All right. That's always really the most fun part of the meeting. Okay. For item 5A, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the October 9th, 2024 regular board meeting as presented?
So moved. Second.
Whatever.
Yes.
I don't even know who made the first. Was it Mr. Cannon? Okay. There's a motion by trustee Cannon and a second by trustee Gerard, I think. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes with a vote of 7-0, and the minutes for the October 9th, 2024 regular board meeting have been approved. Item 6 is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is not debatable and requires a unanimous vote for passage. An item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular order of business for separate discussion and action if any board member, the superintendent, or member of the public so requests. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. There's a motion by trustee Gerard and a second by trustee Lempert. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion passes with a vote of 7-0, and the consent agenda has been approved. Okay, for item 7A, Chris Schaus, Associate Superintendent, Educational Services Division, and Sarah Notch, Executive Director, Center for Access and Engagement, will provide a report on student data for Corydon Community Schools. Associate Superintendent Childs and Executive Director Notch. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Bonini, Board of Trustees, as well as our Superintendent. Pleasure to be here this evening. First of many opportunities we're going to be able to see data this year. This is at the end of first quarter, so we'll do the data dive into the first quarter and what we're seeing, and then some pieces that we're actually adjusting as a result of looking at that data. I'd like to start off in really looking at some of the enrollment by student groups. So this does remain a concern and something that we need to be conscious of. And by that, I mean, when you take a look at the number of students in total enrollment, it's much more of a story to look at the students that we're receiving through referral and incarceration. So you will still see the disparity that we've raised previously around students that have that may have disabilities or students of color. They're still disproportionately included in the mix of who we're receiving into Hillcrest and Gateway specifically. You'll also see that disparity though at Canyon Oaks. So this is going to be an area that as we work as a county office, we continue to work jointly to be able to support districts in addressing these pieces too of what is the story that's not being told and which students are not showing up in this number, and what access or programs may they be using that is different than the programs that we're referring students of color and students with disabilities to. You also take a look at our English learner LPAC levels. So you'll see on the left and the right-hand side there, Gateway and Hillcrest respectively. These are LTEL, so long-term English learners. That means that they've been in the US for 6 years and still have not been able to receive the support level required to receive that proficiency. What we're looking for is a 4 and some additional LEA requirements for reclassification. So if you kind of look at the overall standards of what this looks like, on the left-hand side, you see the students that we currently have at Gateway are a 1, which means they're meeting minimal within that language development scope on LPAC. The pieces that we also need to remember coming out of COVID is when you see Hillcrest side, we do have a couple of students at that LPAC 4 level, which means we need to start monitoring for, do we have other assessments and pieces that we can put within that monitoring to classify students. If we are able to reclassify those students, that means that we would then have the requirement to make sure within the next 4 years, whether that's with us or moving back to a district, that we actually do monitor and make sure that students are successful. And again, those are kind of the overall levels of development. So you'll see at the bottom there, there's a footnote. That level is derived at a couple of different portions, but the testing pieces include listening and speaking, as well as reading and writing to come up with that overall score. Average daily attendance. So this is preliminary. You'll see that in most of the marking. So our quarter ended last Wednesday, and last Wednesday night was when I pulled all of the additional data. So hot off the presses, but that doesn't also allow us to necessarily go back and make sure that all of the excused absences and those other pieces may be in play here. So I do note that those are preliminary data pieces. Here's also a piece of the story as you look at this though. So from August to October here, you're seeing a 68%. Where does that rank in terms of what it may or may have not been in the past couple of years? We're about 71 to 72 respectively within that. So it ranks right within there. What I will say that we've seen in this one, and when you're using such small sample sizes, it also only takes one student within that sample size that may trigger a piece of ADA totaling going respectively much lower. The story that, we've had the conversation of is when we pulled data, and each one of the bar graphs that you're seeing here are respective students that are actually at Gateway currently. And what I've been working with Director Jimenez, and we've been having the conversation of each one of these students, you have 100% up there. So we can come into this looking at it from a deficit function. Every student that we were referred was chronic absentee prior to getting to us. And we have students that are now performing at 100% and showing up every day. We have students that are at 82%. So while it's not perfect and not a science of exactly where we want to be in the overall ADA, the story of the progress really allows us to tell when we come back to the next quarter and we run the next quarter span, are we seeing the same effects that we're seeing now? Have the students that are at that 67% moved up? And then where are we at with really making sure that that's stable? In looking at that ADA data too, what we will be able to see over the course of the year is students that have stayed with us. What is that progression versus looking at potentially what they refer to as apples to oranges? When you take yearly data, we're not necessarily talking about the same students. So it's harder to kind of get that trajectory of knowing what those impacts are. Executive Director Notch is going to speak in a little bit here around individual learning plans, but this is part of making sure that we know every single student and what the progression of each student is and acknowledging that growth. Couple of pieces in grade distribution, again, preliminary data, so teachers do have the ability to be able to go back and adjust grades if they found an error or a student may have completed work and they're willing to accept it. So that does occur in a couple of the preliminary data pieces or things to be able to take a look at. This is gateway distribution of grades according to the classes currently being offered this quarter. And again, the positive here is that this allows us to make some real-time change versus the student receiving a transcript grade without being able to have some remediation pieces of being able to potentially change that to a passing mark. So we do have some pieces that we need to collaborate around, specifically within English and social studies, to see what is it that may be happening for our students and how can we look at the relevancy of the learning that they're doing, the voice that they may have, what's working and what isn't potentially working. But I think this also speaks to within the band of social studies, we do have a need, which we've called out before. We need an adoption within that. So we are working on that with Executive Director Gwen Lee's team to make sure that we are moving forward with a social studies adoption, which will give us some of those tools too to kind of shift how that may be feeling and experienced for the learning of our students. Our distribution at Hillcrest, areas that are kind of highlighted here, you will see, and this is where collaboration function can definitely come into play in addition to. So as our teachers are finding success with students, what may those successes be that look differently within similar subgroups? So whether that is English or PE, if we're seeing successes, are we connecting those pieces within our teachers too, so that they're having conversations about what might be working for our students? Two areas there are math and science that we are keeping an eye on in terms of being able to support or push in to provide additional assistance. Again, science within that band is one of those ones that is on our adoption cycle to make sure that we're doing training and looking at different ways of pedagogies and pieces that could help students interact with science in a different way. Our last grade distribution you'll see up there is our Canyon Oaks team. So they're doing a great job out there as well. You'll see definitely a little bit of a different variety. Again, one student, when you look within the enrollment pieces, it's very hard to kind of go, is this trend specific? It's not at this point. We won't really know until we get to the end of the semester too and continue to move through the bands of the progressions of our students continuing to perform over time in space. So again, those are our preliminary pieces within grade distributions. You'll see some of the adjustments when we come back during the end of the semester to be able to give that data piece of what has moved and what pieces may we have drawn from to be able to help support or shift some of the things that we're seeing. I'm going to pass it off to Executive Director Notch to move through credit recovery and A through G pieces.
Good evening. Tying our grade distribution to our credit recovery and accrual rates, we have 35 courses that students are are enrolled in total this semester. And in just over one quarter, as Associate Superintendent Schaus mentioned, that just recently ended, we had students complete 13 courses. So they were able to get credit for a semester in 13 courses in just one quarter. And I'm calling that out specifically because I recall a conversation in our board study session last year when we were developing our LCAP that really needed to be a focus in the development of new structures this year. And so we're very excited that the numbers are supporting that we've been able to improve those credit recovery structures. And you'll notice if you're adding the numbers of courses in progress to the numbers of courses completed, it does not total 35. And that's because we frequently enroll students in more than one credit recovery course at a time. It allows a lot of flexibility in them kind of moving between courses and completing at a pace that best supports their learning needs and reducing their burnout. It's also been an LCAP goal that we provide access to A through G courses. And this year we have a robust list of courses that were approved in our portal. And while we continue to enhance our academic offerings, including through the curriculum adoptions, this approved list that you'll see on this slide and the following slide provides our students with course offerings more than we've ever had before. And for the first time, A through G approved, which is a huge accomplishment and was a heavy lift from a multitude of people on a team, including our staff, our college counselors, our administrators. So we're very excited about that. This slide shows our history, social science, and English courses. And then on this slide, you'll see our math, science, VAPA, and elective courses. And then finally, we wanted to present information about our individual learning plans. We have a 100% completion rate for the development of our ILPs for all of our students, which also directly ties to our LCAP goals and our ongoing data review cycles that are called out in the LCAP as well. The next few slides will show you some components of those ILPs. This first section does pull a lot of demographic data in, but one thing to note is the student strength-based approach. By having the student strengths and successes listed and discussed first, it really allows us to celebrate those aspects of the student's profile and then potentially leverage them to help some of the identified needs that come up later in the discussion. This section allows the team to think through what supports could look like for students across all domains and all tier levels of support. And the conversation isn't about what do students need to do to be successful. It's really about what can we do as staff to help ensure that the students are supported as best as they can be on an individualized basis. The best practice examples that are listed here serve as a conversation starter. So it's not a full menu. If there are things that the data indicate are appropriate examples of ways to support students, then they certainly can be added. But this helps anchor the development of the ILPs in best practices and really reminds the team to kind of go through and look at each domain across each tier level that's indicated. And then the last section, I'm so excited to share that we had 100% parent participation in the multidisciplinary team development of the ILPs, which is huge because if we're talking about supporting the whole child across all domains, we have to include as many people as possible who can help weigh in on what those needs look like. So in Gateway, we had 100% parent participation, and at Hillcrest, our multidisciplinary team included members from probation and from BHRS as well. And it's really exciting to have this happen, not in a vacuum, but around a table with people who know about and care about the students. So we are excited about this, this first push for our ILP development and what that means for informing our instruction. And we'll continue that process as students enroll with us throughout the year. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Does the board have any comments or questions? Trustee Torres?
Hi, really excited to know that there was 100% engagement from the parents. Just out of curiosity, did they give any feedback in regards to that process and their participation?
Yeah, we actually debriefed this. So I was curious of the same thing, and I got what you probably think may have happened. But parents that said for the first time they were being called and asked to be at the table prior to their student being in trouble. So a lot of times, you know, we're moving through students that may not have fit a traditional setting, and they come into us, and the first time that they're getting outreach from the school is around something that's positive. So let's talk about what your student does do well and what are those strengths pieces, and how can I support? So we got several comments from families you know, that initial piece of like your heart kind of sinks a little bit. You're used to getting a different type of phone call, and it was very different for them. So they're excited to be able to also come back and have the conversation of how is my student doing. And definitely testament to our coordinator of school programs and our director of school programs and our teachers really being able to follow up in space with our families to continue to engage and go after that last one and go, okay, is it Zoom that's going to work for you? Great, let's make that. So removing the obstacles of sometimes how we're not able to participate as parents or be able to be in venue. But I think between the two atmospheres of being able to provide those virtual spaces as well as in person, game changer for sure for parents.
Trustee Camacho.
Thank you so much for this report. I feel like I really have insight into the experience of a student and a family going through our programs, which I think is a priority for this board for sure. One request, can we get a copy of the ILP, the blank one, a clear one? It's kind of hard to read it on there, but I really love the details that are in there. So I'd love to take a look at that. One question about the about transportation. Can you remind me, what are the transportation options and how are our students getting to school?
So are you talking about Gateway specifically? or-
Gateway specific, because the other two are, yeah.
So depending on the district that that refers the students, they have a couple of different options. There are some buses that come from school districts. When that's not available, there are alternate options such as taxis, or I think at one point they even offered bus passes. So really being able to individualize based on what works for the family. But transportation is something that is provided by the district to get the student to Gateway.
Great, that's great to hear. And I appreciate you, Assistant Superintendent Strauss, reminding us of looking at attendance from a positive viewpoint and those students who are showing up 100%. I also have questions about, do we know some of the causes, at least that are self-reported, of what's causing absence?
Sure, and I actually have some data as to why they may be up as well. So we do have 2 staff members that are very much so engaged on the attendance side. So one of the things that they decided to do was, we're going to call the family ahead of time. Mom's having a hard time waking the student up in the morning and getting to class. Great, we'll do a door knock and see if the student happens to go with us. So they teamed up 2 of our staff members, our youth development specialist and our bilingual counselor, and went out and met with the family and said, what do we need to do to get you to school? So not as common of an option that a lot of districts may have to be able to provide that level, but what it did do was spark the piece of like, when you're not showing up and I show up all of a sudden, now somehow I've motivated myself to get there because I don't really want you coming over to the house to see where I'm at. So that has definitely helped as a tool to be able to spark some of that movement. We've also tried different pieces with cabs or taxis when they've missed sometimes the buses from their districts or other things that districts have put in place. So it's kind of a constant fluent piece between our district back and forth. But that's what we're looking at right now is when you show them they care, they've been showing up more as a result. But that is very much so a testament to the staff thinking a little bit deeper and outside the box as to what we've normally been able to produce in the past.
That's great. And one last, still on the same topic, is transportation a specific thing spoken about in those ILP meetings or in orientation, or do you talk about transportation directly?
It is, and a lot of times when you look at like their pre-SART or the SART process that they may have gone through within their own districts, we go back and look at whatever information and evidence we have from the district too to say, was that working for the student? Was it offered to the student? Bus passes has also been something that regionally, Samtrans, got it. Samtrans has partnered with us in the past. They still do. So they offer us bus passes over the summer as well, but they also offer us opportunities to be able to do that at no cost to some of our families that are struggling. So we're going to do everything we can to listen to what that input is of the why. Haven't run into some of the pieces that may also pop up, which are siblings. So I need to get to the siblings first and then, but I think that may also be because of a later start now with high school. So that seems to be not something that has popped up very much for us at this point.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Trustee Alvaro?
Thank you. Thank you for that report. I want to follow up on the attendance, and I'm delighted to hear that staff is trying to meet with Kids 101 because, yeah, some of the things I heard when I was helping out with tutoring at the community schools was, kids who had to get siblings up and ready for school and then they were late because, or they just said, forget it, I'm not going to come. And so we heard a lot of that kind of problem that I'm sure your staff is communicating with them. That's great. There's also, I don't, do you do like attendance awards?
We have not yet. I think a natural home and a place for them to be able to fit is really looking within positive behavior intervention systems, rewarding kids for the behaviors that you want to see. So this is very much so an easier area for us to be able to award kids points within 5-star in those pieces that allow kids to then redeem them or find something that they feel valuable to. But at this point, there isn't anything. We had a conversation about, we just got the honor roll list and I said, wouldn't it be interesting if? So that was our dinner conversation. So very much so an option for us.
I was so amazed. I went to I have gone to the graduation ceremonies at Pilarcitos, which is the Cabrillo Continuation School, so many times. And part of the ceremony is these are kids, most of them aren't graduating. They're just there to support. And they get these just paper certificates for attendance. And the 100%ers go first and then they go on down the line. From these kids are so proud to walk away with a piece of paper for showing up at school. At first I thought it was kind of strange. And after a while I realized, boy, it's just one more way of giving them a pat on the back for who knows what they have to overcome to get there. So that was just a suggestion that I had. And I wanted to ask about the English learners. I looked at the numbers and I mean, they're really, really high and they're not moving very quickly. Kids who've been in the community for 6 years or more. And I'm wondering if you have any access, because I had a couple ideas about to do like one-on-one tutoring with them for English.
So students will get the opportunity within their ILP and their credit recovery period to be able to work more specifically on their needs. I think one of the things that it's still new to us at the moment, but offering an ELD class at Gateway for the first time when we're looking at a band of 5 students that are at a 1, that's going to be really important information to us to look at moving forward into the end of the semester, into the next quarter. But I think from a level of like the most sustainable support and direct targeted support, an ELD class is very different than suggesting that integrated will serve all students' needs, because we know that really has not matched student needs in the past. So with respect, I would say as we kind of watch this unfold, it is going to be a conversation with the teacher as well as kind of the students as to how they're experiencing it, and seeing if we're able to kind of see that trajectory change when we're doing very much so targeted class support within that group.
And I mean, not to load more work onto the teachers, because that's a huge lift, right? And one-on-one is huge. But I just think of like, the programs I see, like the San Mateo County Library System does one-on-one literacy tutoring with, pre-literate or semi-literate English learners, and it's miracles happen. And it's because there's that development there. And I know, like, I don't know what CSM is doing, but the San Mateo High School District Adult School is working miracles with English learners who aren't even enrolled in the district. They're adults. So I know there's some things out there where maybe there's some way of kind of pulling something in to help the teachers, because they have a huge load to carry, to help the teachers to be able to have a little bit more direct delivery. Because if they're not learning English, they're just not going to be doing well anyplace else. So.
And I don't disagree. What I do think will end up happening within this band, though, is that it allows us, versus what we've had in the past, which is that our English learners are spread throughout multiple classes. We now have a band of student that is in a specific class for a certain amount of time, that allows us to really look at the language acquisition versus are they not leveraging content because of a language barrier, which is a very different purpose within our integrated pieces. So I think it's probably both and in terms of where we go with supports, but this is a good starting place for us to look at, can we do this in a way with 5 students that we have and really be targeted with something different than they've seen before, versus trying to attach to the content and being left behind from academic content. Do they have the skills to really get the acquisition of language first before moving into content?
Good. All right. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there more questions? Trustee Cannon?
So congratulations to you professionals and to your staff for accomplishing this great connection with parents. As a board member, I'm very, very pleased to hear about it. And, obviously, I know we all feel it's key to kids' success. What impressed me the most in your presentation about getting kids to school was it seems to me you've adopted an all-in attitude. There are reasons and excuses, and you're not accepting any of them. And that's what it takes, isn't it? So thank you for that.
Are there other questions or comments? I have a couple. One is, you mentioned the transportation, which I think is so important for getting the students to Gateway. And I knew, well, from last year that the bus line had been canceled for that route. Has it come back? I heard you mention bus passes, so I was just curious if that's another option for the students at this point. Stay apprised of
I am
that
not
too.
positive on Samtrans, but as I'm saying that to you, I'm going to turn and look at our director of school programs. Is Samtrans back? Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just relaying from Dr. Jimenez, most of the transportation was actually supplied from school districts, from school buses themselves.
Okay.
He is following up with Samtrans in addition to.
Okay, thank you for that information. And then I was looking, as you were going through, I think it was on slide 5 and 6, you just showed, the first quarter grades, which are really helpful, just kind of see how things are going, right? To check in. On the courses that are listed, I'm curious, I understand that we have, we've talked about this before, we have the CTE course for math, and then I saw algebra was listed online. I was curious specifically for Hillcrest, which courses, since we don't have the specific teachers for math and science, which courses are these grades based on? Are these online courses? Are these in-person courses? Are these CTE courses? at
With
Hillcrest?
regard to
Science and math,
at Hillcrest.
yes.
So Hillcrest is an in-person class with a live teacher at Hillcrest. Both science, which is one of the ones that we need for adoption, as well as math. Math is the Carnegie adoption piece that is already in place.
Okay.
Further thought, because I think what you're asking is how come they don't appear on A through G? So that, if I will, Algebra 1 is one of the state requirements. So we move through the system of working with Cindy Dominguez, one of our coordinators of counseling, in addition with the teachers last year, to see what is it that you typically have taught? What does the syllabi look like? And then we're able to match forward some of the other, whether it may be an incarcerated facility or a community day school, others that are using similar curriculum pieces that may have already gone through, to be able to put that through to the portal and get approved. So if you're not seeing it on portal, it doesn't mean that we're done. It just means that that was the start of getting some baseline of what we know to be at least the state standards, and then, but those will be able to also be a little bit more fluent on transferability back to their respective school districts, which will also help with some of that transition piece of where does this one belong on the transcript.
Okay, that's super helpful. My other specific question had to do with the teachers and the single subject, which I had raised in a prior meeting. And so that curriculum is being delivered by whom?
So I want to use caution with exploring which teachers are identifiable, by
Not
which.
specific teachers, but like credential.
Sure. So credential wise, that person is credentialed in math, is not credentialed in science, but within the alternative education system, we are allowed to have misplacements of the direct credential in order to be able to allow them to be able to service student needs.
Okay, thank you for that additional information. Okay, are there any more questions? All right, there's also, we have public comment if there is any. Are there any comments from the public? Do we have any hands raised, cards? Anything?
No hands raised.
All right, there is no action to take on this item. Thank you so much for the
Thank you, guys.
presentation. Okay. For item 7B, Joy Dardanelle, Executive Director, District Improvement and Support, Grace Estrella, Coordinator, District Improvement and Support, and representatives from the Sequoia Union High School District will provide a report on differentiated assistance, work with districts on improved outcomes. Executive Director Dardanelle and Coordinator Estrella. Sorry.
I'm on my tippy toes, so I'm going to move this down. All right. Okay. Hi, good evening, Board President Bonini, members of the board, and Superintendent McGee. It is my pleasure this evening to present the Differentiated Assistance DA work with districts on improved outcomes. I am Gracie Estrella, Coordinator, District Improvement and Support. With me tonight is Joy Dardanelle, Executive Director, District Improvement and Support. Right. So the differentiated assistance timeline. The California dashboard was first published in 2017. It was established to assist LEAs in identifying strengths, weaknesses, and areas in need of improvement. During the 2019 through 2020 and 2020 through 2021 school years, we had a global pandemic. This created shifts in the educational experiences of our schools and students, which led to many state and federal accountability requirements, such as state testing and attendance collection, for example, being waived, suspended, or adjusted due to the impact of COVID-19. This led to the dashboard being suspended in 2020 and 2021. The impact was that LEAs eligible for DA on the 2019 dashboard results remained eligible with unchanged identification. Moving out of the pandemic, the California dashboard became reincorporated in 2022 to 2023 school year and became fully operational in the 2023 to 24 school year. And that's provided for context for our work. So differentiated assistance, impact from 2022. This slide shows the following. 14 of our 23 of our LEAs were eligible for DA. I'd like to highlight the first set of data. With our systems of support, 4 of our 14 LEAs exited DA eligibility for all identifications. The following stats specifically shows the number of LEAs that exited DA eligibility for student demographic group. For example, for the demographic group students with disabilities, 11 LEAs were eligible for DA. And with our support, 7 of those 11 have exited DA eligibility for that student demographic. This is a success rate of a little over 50%. The other stats show a similar trend of 50% or more of LEAs exited DA eligibility for a student demographic group with the support of SMCOE. So what does our support look like? The SMCOE impact and supports. Our support and impact is steeped in the following 3 principles: building strong, collaborative, and trusting relationships. Trusting relationships were built over time by having a consistent district lead that met with the LEA leadership in addressing their DA eligibility. I was part of that team, meet with our DA eligible LEAs to share DA criteria, our SDI, our department's types of supports, and identified connections with work already underway to support students. This was done through guiding LEAs in continuous improvement. Together and in partnership with our LEAs, our team has engaged LEAs in continuous improvement to inform root causes for their DA eligibility. We have guided data collection that was student-centered in the following ways. Empathy interviews. We have trained LEA teams in administrating empathy interviews, resulting in increased student representation and voice during the improvement process. We have guided data collection that was student-centered in data talks, implementation of DA-related actions in LCAP, and cycles of inquiry. We facilitated continuous improvement workshops with districts and teacher leaders, resulting in the implementation of plan, do, study, act cycles by teachers. Part of our support also includes coaching, LEA leadership, coaching for equity, We engaged in coaching conversations about implementing change actions, resulting in more consistent implementation and reflection of implementation across the district. To further demonstrate the impact of our partnership, we have invited one of our LEAs to share their experience. Tonight, we have from Sequoia Union High School District, Associate Superintendent of Educational Services, Bonnie Hansen, has been invited to share her experience of support.
Good evening, dear accessible and patient Superintendent McGee and members of the board. It is a pleasure to be here this evening. Before I dive in, I have to give a special shout out to a couple of your board members, and I am doing this because I want it to be on the permanent record. Sometimes people in the public wonder who runs for the school board or for the San Mateo County Office of Education Board in our day and age when things are so up and down politically in education. And I am very grateful for the caliber of the two people I know on this board in ways from my work life. The first one is Hector Camacho. And I just want to say, Hector has left our district many years ago now, but he is still known as somebody who saw and could teach every kid and saw their potential and helped them to rise to high expectations. He is missed dearly. I need the middle college teachers to stop asking if you're ever coming back. It's been a really long time now, but he is remembered fondly. He certainly knows when it comes to pedagogy, what we should be doing. And then I also want to give a special shout out to Ted Lampert because he sent his fabulous daughter to Sequoia High School when I was the principal there. She was a love. And the clearest way that I can demonstrate his quality is that never, ever, not even once, did he or his daughter try and pull a special favor because he had served on the state legislation, right? Drop the mic. So I'm really happy to be here this evening talking to you. We receive regular, responsive, and well-informed support from the San Mateo County Office of Education. This is our second time in differentiated assistance with working with your district. The first time we worked with Carrie Lampert and David Brashear, and his memory is a blessing. And at that time, we made a decision through our process, working with them and looking at our data and community members coming together to say, what is best practice and what are we seeing when we look at what's happening with our students? And we made a decision at the freshman level to stop offering a science class that was not A through G eligible. So we started putting all of our students who were diploma track, which is just about everybody, into biology. The result of that was that our biology passage rates only went up, and that from year one, we now have hundreds of students more in the district. It's been about 7 years now who meet the A through G requirement because of the work that we did with you guys. Tom D from Stanford just came out with a study on the work that we did to stop offering a remedial class lower than algebra, which is someone already noted this evening is a state graduation requirement and an A through G requirement. And his study on the work that happened there and the rise in students' ability to the occasion and the fact that the achievement of students who were traditionally in that class actually stayed the same or went up can also be attributed to the differentiated assistance exercises that we did with your district. So I can tell you from a little further back that they really are working in a tremendous and powerful way. This time around, we are in differentiated assistance because of the suspension and expulsion rates of our African-American students. We also chose to focus on our Pacific Islander students because we tend to go in and out of red on suspension expulsion with our Pacific Islander students. We were in orange this time around and we said, let's do something. We're not proud of orange. And so let's look at what's happening with the experience of those students in our district while we're at it. So Carrie Blanton, who's so good at what she does, I even have her cell phone number and she keeps picking up, bless her heart. She clearly draws the short straw because she's working with our district again this time around. And she is joined by Jeffrey Schmidt, who answers emails incredibly early in the morning on our process this time. And what we decided to do this time around was hear from the customer. So we did empathy interviews with Pacific Islander and African-American students at 4 of our high schools. We were trained on how to do the empathy interviews by Carrie and Jeff. They met with our team several times. They role played the process. They walked with us through data discovery, They have done empathy interviews for us and helped us disaggregate the data. And this time they taught us how to fish. And so we then went out and we did empathy interviews with our students. And the major takeaway from that was, the good news was that we heard very little of, I feel like I'm targeted, which was a concern that we certainly had going in because their suspension and expulsion rates need to go down. But we did hear a lot about across sites. We talked with kids who were very successful in our district and students for whom it had been a real struggle and everybody in between. And what we heard over and over again was about the value that they placed on community and on family. And that the places in our district where they felt most connected was where they had especially adults who looked like them, who served as mentors, ran clubs, and or coached teams, but really any adult who ran an organization of which they were a part, who made school a small environment for them, which is not a surprise, right? Who doesn't want to be seen and known on their school campus? But this seemed to be the value that they had for family was really loud and clear. So going forward, these interviews just happened, ended in May, and the data was disaggregated before the end of the school year. We're now working on what can we do when students first get to us to get them connected, to feel that their background and their culture is seen. It didn't come up as much, but it did come up sometimes about not seeing themselves. Some students didn't see themselves in curriculum, and that was hurtful. So where are the places where we can make students feel like this is their school and that they are seen in our words and actions? So more on that to come. I hope it will be anywhere close to successful as our first round with you. My husband is at a PTSA meeting for Clifford Elementary dads. They're meeting at Gourmet House Stout. So I am responsible for getting our own second grade dolphin to bed. So I'm going to not stay to the end of this presentation. I'm sorry about that, but I am incredibly grateful to the team here. I have friends who work, colleagues who work in other counties where they feel like they're getting their finger waggled at by the county office without any real supports. And I in no way, shape, or form feel that way here. I am my district's dinosaur. I used to be the sweet young thing in E6, but that was about 30 years ago. And my experience with your county office has been nothing but positive. So thank you for hanging in there with us and celebrating when we do well and helping us in our areas for growth.
Okay, I do want to respect Bonnie's time, and I do have an additional 5 slides, and I will go over them, but I want to just check in if any of you had questions for Bonnie before she leaves, because she does have a time limit. Does anyone have a question?
Just
Comment?
Just real quick, right back at you. I have had many exhausting days, but probably the most was being principal today with you. You're an amazing individual. Thank you.
That's. Yep. Okay, no others. Thank you. So one of the reasons why we love to bring our district partners here is because we actually hold the work that we do in confidence, and we don't share other people's stories. So as I go through the remaining slides, you may have questions about who or what exactly, and I'm actually not going to answer those questions. So I'm letting you know that we can bring some stories, but we do want to hold the specifics about specific districts in confidence with those districts. So thank you to Bonnie and to Sequoia for sharing their story with you so you could hear in depth the work that we're doing. So I'm going to continue on and actually talk about differentiated assistance in 2023. Some of this may sound familiar because Gracie presented on how differentiated assistance ended based on the eligibility from 2022. And that transitions into new types of eligibility. For all LEAs, there's 3 different ways that they could be identified in the 2023 year. That's 1, through state indicators. That's the state reported data on the dashboard that might look like chronic absenteeism, state test scores, suspensions, graduation rate. Method 2 is looking only at local indicators, meaning whether or not districts turned in the self-reported surveys, such as their progress towards standard or their climate surveys.
And method 3 is when districts are eligible for a combination of either state reported data or the local indicators. Eligibility is determined in all of these areas according to the 8 state priority areas. For school districts, once they're identified and eligible, they get to have us for a minimum of 2 years. And for charter schools, this is actually the first time since 2019 that they're being identified, and they actually need to meet criteria for differentiated assistance for 2 years before they become officially eligible. Now, that support is only for 1 school year. In looking at how the eligibility changed, Gracie had mentioned that 4 LEAs exited. Of the ones who remained with us, 3 of them were eligible under new identification. That means that they exited and then they got re-identified for something different, a different student group. 3 LEAs decreased in areas of identification, meaning that maybe they were identified for 5 student groups, and in 2023, they were identified for 2 student groups. There were also 2 LEAs that increased in areas of identification. 2 LEAs remained eligible for the exact same identification as they had in the prior year, and 4 LEAs were newly eligible, 2 of those being charters. This is a breakdown of the state eligibility. So when we talk about method 1, which would look at the dashboard and red indicators on the dashboard, these are the number of districts that were identified in each of these different areas. As you can see, similar to past years, chronic absenteeism continues to be a challenge for districts post-pandemic. This year, we're also working a lot with districts in the area of suspension, and particularly in the area of suspension for African-American students. But we continue to support our district leaders, continuing to remain student-centered. We provide or offer monthly meetings with district leadership teams, district workshops, for example, on chronic absenteeism. As our group is also the local control and accountability plan group, we try as best as we can to align the work in differentiated assistance with the work that we're doing with the local control accountability plan. As you've heard, we have case management. Bonnie attested to that too, where Carrie Blanton, who's actually listening in, worked with them several years ago and continues to work with them. And even on the year that Sequoia was not identified for differentiated assistance, Carrie Blanton continued to provide that support through the local control and accountability plan. This is very intentional on our part because we want to maintain close relationships, not only when you're in differentiated assistance, but even when districts are not eligible for differentiated assistance. And we always strive to have that cross-organizational work, meaning that we strive to work with the business department as well as student services and other areas of strength that we have at SMCOE in our supports of districts. We continue to grow ourselves professionally in our coaching for improvement and learning. Right now, we're reading the book Arise and in a study group for the book that's written by Elena Aguilar, which is about transformational coaching. We're participating in a network improvement community with 2 of our district partners in conjunction with other districts in the region and West Ed as part of the Bay Area Geographic Lead. And we constantly through the past years that we've been together as a team, push ourselves to improve our process in terms of developing our relationships, in terms of improving our ability to be coaches, in terms of our ability to use an equity-based lens in our work, and at the heart of it, also continuous improvement. Now, what I didn't mention is compliance. We are a compliance team and we're really good at that too, but we see the compliance relationship as really just an opportunity for us to work side by side with districts in this work. And in terms of aligning with the SMCWE strategic plan, we look at goal 1, objective A4, which is looking at how we tier our supports for districts as directly linked to the work that we do in our department. So with that, thank you very much. And if you, oh, I'm sorry, one more slide about with content. One thing that we do want to point out is there are going to be some shifts. The new dashboard's going to be coming out, and there are going to be some changes for eligibility based on that. One is that long-term English learners will be added as a student group across all the indicators. And school districts that fail to complete the California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Systems reports, CalPADS, will also become eligible. And in terms of changing our supports, we really are, as I said, mentioning working on how we're supporting districts in developing their leadership capacity to lead this work. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Trustee Lempert?
Well, first, just thank you for the great work, and obviously the shout out from Bonnie Hanson about how you guys support districts is great. My question is not aimed at your amazing work, but I just want to get your professional thoughts on what I'm sort of grappling with, and that is, this sounds like a good news report, like districts are doing better and this is working. And I guess the complexity of it is bothering me. Like, so when we look at this, our kids graduating from high school, are we narrowing the gaps between our Latino kids or Black kids, others? The data I've seen is really not for most of our districts. And so what I'm grappling with is two things. I mean, are you really seeing improvement? Like those scores are improving, the gaps are narrowing, because that's not what we saw in the latest data. And then the other thing is just sort of a bigger point and just sort of a point of concern. And that is, when a hospital, the health system is saving a lot of folks, they still say we need more, because not a single person should die. When law enforcement, crime rate might be down, we need more help. And so I just want to guard against what seemed like a good news report, because when you look at the data, and you talk to parents in the area and you see the great, it's almost like I'm hearing a report and then I'm seeing the gaps. And so help me understand that. And that's not to say you guys aren't doing awesome work, but it's also sort of like, what we're hearing on the ground is like, there's these huge gaps, and every parent wants their kid to score just as high as any other kid and be eligible for college and do whatever that kid wants. And we're not seeing that. So is it just that this is too confusing, or are we really getting better and the next set of scores are going to show those gaps decreasing?
So I think that one of the things that I'll point out is that there's a part about perspective. And when it's your child who's not doing well, or it's your community that's not experiencing success, in my opinion, whether or not more people are experiencing success still doesn't change that feeling that it's not enough. So I 100% agree with you that it's not enough if it's not everyone. With that said, I also agree that there is a danger in good news reports, that if we take a good news report and rest on that, then it creates a danger of not continuing the journey because we found a comfortable place. And what I can tell you is that what we've seen is that some of the things that we've done have been effective, and we want to continue doing those things. The relationships that we've built with district leaders so that they have our phone numbers and they call us when they need help, sometimes at off hour times, but we invite that. And we want to show up for them in those times, in those spaces. And in doing that, we're invited to much deeper conversations. And we're upping our skill level because we realize we used to be invited into consultancy. Tell me your advice. How could we do this? What should I do in this move? And now we're really trying to move in these deeper relationships into coaching. How can we shift mindsets? But with that said, it's slow work. So I think that how we view it, or how I view it on my team, I won't speak for everyone, although we talk a lot, is that we want to recognize what we're doing right, that next year we're going to do it again. Building relationships, being thoughtful about continuous improvement, asking about the voices of the people that you're designing for. All of those are essential and important. And when we meet with districts, we want to find out about what the specific issue is based on the area of identification that we're being asked to tackle. Differentiated assistance is only looking at student groups in the red that have been identified in 2 areas in a year on the dashboard. That's not everybody. So we're doing what we can with the groups that we're working with.
No, that was a great answer. And I hope you understood. Part of my question was, you guys are doing great work. We need even more support and more help so we can do even more. But thank you. That was a great answer.
Are there other questions? Trustee Alvaro.
Thank you. Joy Dardanelle, I know that you know that I think you rock. You're amazing. And in all the years we've worked together, I've always felt like that. And I'm so proud of what you are doing with this team. I love what Bonnie Hanson had to say about not finger wagging, because that obviously, when a district goes into, I like how you say they're eligible for differentiated assistance instead of like they have to do it. You know, it's a difference, and it makes a difference. So thank you and congratulations. I just had one question, which is, you were talking about some new criteria, and that if a district doesn't properly file their CalPADs, they'll be, I don't understand that at all.
Mhm.
Can you help me?
Yeah, so the dashboard, you'd like to believe that it's what we call universal screening, meaning it has everybody's data. And then you can look at it and say, well, based on this data, then these are the districts that are identified or eligible. But the problem is, what if a district doesn't turn in their data? So that's why now CalPADS becomes a requirement, because they're basically the incompletes. They're the ones who didn't turn in their homework to be graded. So the dashboard's now saying, well, if you didn't turn in your homework to be graded, then you're automatically going to be eligible for support.
Okay, that makes good sense. Thank you.
Trustee Cannon.
So that was great. And I was particularly impressed by you bringing such a respected educator here. And I remember, her opinion counts to me, because I remember several years ago when she was upset with us, and she was pretty outspoken in expressing that. So I would guess that when she says praise, she means praise. What was encouraging about her specific comments to me was, like Sarah and Chris, she was saying about the suspension rates, we're going to get to the bottom of this. No excuses, no reasons count. We're just going to improve. And what would you, I don't know, Joy, is it fair to say, do you find that attitude more or less commonly, Mrs. Straya?
I'll say that every district's different. And I think that every district, the similarity is that all of them are there for the best interest of kids, but each district is dealing with a different set of challenges. And some of those are systemic, meaning that they might not even know who's getting suspended, or a lot of with chronic absenteeism, there aren't structures in place for them to identify kids quickly, to do interventions early on. Other challenges include turnover in leadership. And I think that's one of the ways that our team helps. When there is turnover in leadership, we help to continue conversations that happened in prior years. But every district is different, and every community is unique and different. And what may be causing challenges for Black African-American students in one community may not be the same reasons for another community with that same demographic group. So we really try to work with them in differentiated help, differentiated assistance.
Thank you for that, Joy. Ms. Straya.
Are there other questions? I have a couple. One is, well, I just want to acknowledge the, what I think is so important that you're doing the work in this capacity and also with the LCAPs. And so when the districts are eligible, as we say, and they get to work with the county office and with your team, and then you're also seeing the supports of the LCAPs. Are you seeing that get embedded? Because there's a lot of talk in our county about equity and using equity lens and how we want to make these changes, right? And so I'm just curious if that, in your opinion, is reflected in these LCAPs and getting embedded into the work that's happening.
So in the past, the LCAP used to request that some districts who've been identified for many years in differentiated assistance include related actions or goals. But now everybody's required to include required actions, not only for differentiated assistance, but also if they have any red indicators at any school for any student group. So it's almost to the point where, and that's only based on the 2023 dashboard, and that analysis will stay in place for 3 years. So the LCAP has some interesting ways that they're trying to do and operationalize what you're asking. And we check for that. And we check for those required actions. And we have conversations about, well, what is this really looking like at your schools for this student group? But with that said, is that the best way? I think that the legislature is still trying to figure out what the best way is to check and make sure that that content is embedded. But this is the current way that we're doing it.
Okay, thank you for that. And my second question has to do with the, what I've, looking at slide number, gosh, what, I don't know if it's a page or a slide number. Anyway, it's the one with the differentiated student groups that are that are eligible, and noting that the students with disabilities are by far well, they seem the most, and they're the most represented among the different categories. And so I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your work on that front. I think we've talked about this before. I've probably asked a similar question, but is it intersectional with the work of anything that the SELPA is working on supporting the districts? I feel like you said before in some other meeting that you're working in tandem, but can you tell us more about how that's working now in this time?
So the SELPA also has their different accountability measures. They look at things that are slightly different than what we look at. So some of the areas that they're looking at don't quite align with the districts that were identified for differentiated assistance. With that said, we work closely with the SELPA team in the LCAP process. And so they actually review all the LCAPs with us. That's not a necessary part of the relationship with SELPAs and county offices. We choose to do that to kind of elevate the work that we're both doing in districts in order to make sure that that work is aligned. With that said, one of the things that we noticed in the work with students with disabilities is that it's often not only students with disabilities, but also other student groups that might be having challenges in academic areas. And so when we do deep dives with districts, we look at that. Districts that may only be identified for students with disabilities, there's other questions that we look at. For example, how students are identified, what's the flow that students are, how they move through identification processes within their schools, and what some of those challenges might be.
Okay, thank you. And when we're looking at, just one final question, when we're looking at this category of students with disabilities, it's students identified as with an IEP under IDEA, right? Not students with 504s necessarily.
So students with disabilities, as it pertains to the dashboard, are students with IEPs. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm done with my questions, but Trustee Jarrett has
That's
questions.
okay.
No.
I actually was a little curious about the charter schools, since that's something that you hadn't looked at since 2019. And is there any comparison about charter schools that needed the help before 2019 and what you're seeing now?
That's an interesting question. Well, I'll say that because our department is an accountability department, we actually have had a long relationship with charter schools because of comprehensive supports and improvement, CSI. So charters that were already identified for CSI were ones that were already connected to us. And we were helping them with their school site planning, and we were helping them with continuous improvement prior to differentiated assistance identification. So comprehensive supports and improvement identifies at a school-based level. So does Williams is identified at a school-based level. We also cover Williams in our department. So we had these relationships already with the charter schools. And I would say that the challenges that they have now, I'm not really sure. I'd have to actually look at the different criteria, but what I'm trying to share is that we've been working with these same people. This is not the first time that we've met them, but we've had ongoing relationships with them through this time.
Okay. Okay, I just, are there, well, when you're looking at it that way, are there a larger number now that you're working with than previous even, or is it not, is it because you've already got those relationships established?
So this year, there's only 2 charter schools, and it's the first time that we've worked with charter schools in differentiated assistance, period. So we weren't working with them before.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any more questions from the board? All right. Are there any comments from the public?
No comments.
Okay, thank you. There is no action to take on this item. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
for the information. All right, we're on to item 8A, which is superintendent's comments. Superintendent McGee, do you have any comments to share?
Yes, I have a couple. We're looking forward to tomorrow's school visits with Trustee Torres and Trustee Gerard. And Mr. Cannon, are you going to make it tomorrow?
We'll chat about it.
Okay, and potentially Mr. Cannon. The trustees will visit Gateway and Hillcrest and then come back to the Ann Campbell Center, where the group will learn about that program and tour the school. But also at the Ann Campbell Center, you'll be joined by CSBA President Albert Gonzalez, who's had planned a visit to San Mateo County months ago. He's going to be here to see our programs, and then he's heading to Cabrillo Unified for the afternoon to see their programs. And President Gonzalez is doing these visits all across the state. So this just coincided with the same day that you're over at the school site. So it seemed like a good idea to show off the Ann Campbell Center there with him. I wanted to thank Trustee Camacho for inviting us out to Jefferson High School last week to observe the Voice Box art activation project. Trustee Camacho had the opportunity to be connected to this project through his leadership award from the James Irvine Foundation through his work with Reach University. And the Voice Box gives students the opportunity to use or students and staff, or anyone who wants to sit on the seat inside the box, to use their voice to respond to a prompt. And the theme for this Voice Box experience was, if I were a teacher. So it was raising the awareness and elevating the profession of teaching. And it was just really great to be out of the school site, see the students, learn about the Voice Box project, and to actually go through the experience for myself. I sat in the seat and tried to answer the question. So thank you, Trustee Camacho, for that work and for inviting us out. That was fun. I want to express appreciation for Trustee Lempert for your advocacy. I know you've been speaking out this week on proposed revisions to LCFF regulations, and that your key message is to demand greater clarity for the funding that's generated for the underserved students or students who are underachieving because of the way the system is serving them. Still working to preserve local flexibility of the flexibility of local districts to choose how they are serving those students through their programs, strategies, and services. So both trying to raise the bar and encourage districts to exercise their local control. It's important work, it's system work, and we appreciate your voice being out there. Finally, just reminding the board about last year's Gateway design process. As a reminder, we worked in collaboration with the Stanford Policy Lab, who used the coursework for the policy lab was our Gateway design process. And it involved graduate students in both the Stanford Law School and the School of Education. The students provided research, analysis, and they produced a report. I did share the key takeaways in the Gateway design process presentation at the board meeting in July. But the Stanford team is preparing to release the final report. So I'm going to be sharing that report with all the board members in the next few days for those of you who want to read all the details. The idea is that Gateway could include a vision of a middle college model in partnership with either the College of San Mateo or Skyline as a future vision. The report actually does a really great job of describing and reflecting our detailed process that we went through. So it's really nice that it's there and we didn't have to write it ourselves. Additionally, Associate Superintendent Chris Schaus and I will be traveling to the 4th annual California Pathways to Higher Education for Juvenile Justice Impacted Youth, sponsored by the Youth Law Center. And we will be speaking at that conference about our Gateway design process and what we learned and what we believe about the ability of all students to learn and grow and thrive regardless of any past mistakes they've made or their physical location. So that will be in November, the middle of November. And when we get back, we look forward to sharing about that experience. And I think that concludes my comments for tonight.
Thank you. All right, for item 9A, the board will move to closed session to hear interdistrict attendance appeal 24-7, IAA 24-7, filed on behalf of a student currently residing in the Millbrae Elementary School District, but requesting to attend school in the Burlingame School District. Before we begin, are there any comments from the public? No. Okay. Okay. Sorry, sudden echo. The board is returning from closed session into open session. And for item 10A, the board will report on action taken during closed session for interdistrict attendance appeal 24-7. The board first voted on a finding that the nature of the appeal was that of an interdistrict transfer. The board voted 7-0. And then the board also voted to approve the appeal and allow the student to attend the Burlingame School District from kindergarten through 8th grade by a vote of 7-0 as well. For item 11A, the board will engage in a first reading of updated policies. No action is required. The board policies come back to the board at its November 20th, 2024 meeting for a second reading and action. Superintendent McGee, would you like to present on this?
The board is presented with, let me find the page here. Oops, wrong packet. Actually 4 policies and 4 board bylaws that had updates in one of the CSBA quarterly updates. These were only pulled out by staff as definitely topics that would apply directly to the board to review. And so our staff forwarded this over to the board policy subcommittee in our using our digital links. And I believe that the board policy subcommittee reviewed these 8 policies. And rather than just rely on a digital link, we went ahead and printed out each of the policies so you can see the red lines. The red is what was removed in the CSBA update, and the green is what has been rephrased or added. This is a first reading, so the board has a chance to ask questions or point out any kinds of challenges you might want to explore further. And then we'll bring it back at the November 20th board meeting for second reading.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking for it. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the revised board policy? Trustee Gerard.
Yes, I have a question about the county board candidates shall not expend, and a candidate shall not accept any public money, that part of the bill. And my question is, do we really want that in there?
So which board policy 9220?
Correct.
Yes, 8, yeah.
Can you tell us which paragraph? Sorry.
It would be, oh my goodness.
It's on the second page of that particular policy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's on the second page, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th paragraph down.
I see it.
Under campaign conduct.
The second change. So I think there's a government code reference in our question, our discussion about this. It seems as though the statement as this, obviously, because CSBA changed this and recommended this, the clause as stated is permissible under the government code, but it's been raised whether or not we would want or ever would do this, take this action that's stated here. And I think the part you're referencing is the second part, however, the county board may establish a dedicated fund, and it goes on from there. I don't think we have ever done that, and that we might not do that. So we might propose to strike that portion. Does anyone have any comments or want to give any input now or before we bring this back for second reading?
Go ahead.
Trustee Alvaro.
Just to clarify, Bev, your concern is with
The second part.
the second part of it, not the first part, right?
Right.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to make sure I heard you right.
Yeah. No, no,
Um,
no, no. It's the second part. I just read that to start the paragraph.
So we could identify.
Well, since it says may, and it's therefore permissible, and it's not something we've ever done before, I wouldn't have any problem with removing that part. That there'd be because we don't have a dedicated fund to pay for elections, statements and stuff like that.
And that's what I wanted to remove, was that second part as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would be just fine with that.
Okay. Okay. So, so I agree with that as well. So when we bring this back for second reading, is there any opposition to removing the clause? Trustee Camacho.
Yeah, I think, and this was part of, I would be in favor of keeping it because it's a may, because that was a topic that came up when we had a presentation about board member elections a few months ago, right?
Is it to make it more accessible potentially to certain candidates running?
I think so, yeah. I just remember we talked about, it was on a different presentation and we said, is that something that the board wants to explore? If we remove that statement, we just have to adopt a new statement, I would think, or we'd have to update the board policy if we decided to go down that route. So what I'm thinking is, since it's May, should we leave it pending that conversation, or do we remove it now and add it back into policy if we decide to pursue that?
Well, one theory would be there are hopefully not too many, but certain clauses that we've included in our new policy set, which we may never invoke, that are may clauses, but that they sit there because they can be there and they may have a utility. So maybe we don't take it out. That's one, or we reconsider it if you think there's a conversation that would be a precursor to removing it.
So then I guess then my question maybe to council would be like, let's say we remove this statement. We could still have a conversation about doing that in the future. We could have the conversation even without that policy in there. We would just have to adopt a new policy if we decided we wanted to pursue that.
Yeah, because the authority to establish this fund is in the government code. If the board ever wanted to come back and entertain an idea like this, it could. And I'm just taking a look at government code section 85300. If such a fund were to be established in the future, the board would also have to come up with a resolution that establishes how a candidate might qualify to benefit from that fund. So it's kind of a involved process, but yeah, removing it now doesn't preclude further discussions in the future.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I was trying to think through when it would come up, and that didn't pop into my mind when I was thinking about it before, like, oh, right, it could be for a reason that, an equity-based reason or a accessibility reason or something like that. So does anyone else have thoughts? Trustee Gerard, does that make sense in terms of the way Trustee Camacho raised it or proposed it? Do you still
So,
propose to remove it?
so are we removing it or not? I mean, I'm
That's
not
the
sure.
question. That's
Huh?
that's the question.
Hmm?
Whether we would propose to remove it. This is first reading, so we're just discussing it, but there's any thoughts before we bring it back?
I just prefer removing it, so.
Trustee Alvaro.
I would prefer removing it and then talking about it at some point in the future, because we just saw an example of that. When there's just a whole lot of extra words sometimes floating around, people glom onto them and go, wait, this says you're going to do it. And it's, then you have to point out, it says we may, and we haven't done it. And so I think until that decision is made, I would rather have that sentence out of there.
Okay. I think that's enough of a consensus. So when we bring it back for a second reading, can we please remove that clause? Are there any other comments that we want considered before it comes back for second reading? Okay, seeing none. Are there any comments from the public on these policies? Are there any public?
Public is silent.
The silent public. Okay. There is no action to take on this item. Okay, thank you. For item 11B, is there a motion to approve resolution number 24-55, implementing board policy 9250 to compensate trustee Alvaro for her absence from the October 9th, 2024 board meeting due to illness?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by trustee Gerard and a second by trustee Torres. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0 and the
No.
resolution number.
Excuse me, I abstain.
Oh, sorry. Are there any abstentions? Okay. The motion passes 6-0 with one abstention. And the resolution number 24-55 has been approved. For item 11C, when an ad hoc subcommittee meets or a representative attends a meeting related to their given assignment, board members may choose to bring a report to the board at this time. Would any board members like to report out? Trustee Alvaro.
Just a real quick notice that we are going to, we finally rescheduled the Outdoor Ed Subcommittee's visit up to Jones Gulch to see the new infrastructure improvements and be able to come back and report to the board on those.
Wonderful. Thank you. Are there any other reports? Okay. Seeing none. Oh, were there any comments or questions from the board? Okay. Are there any public comments? Okay. There's no action to take on this item. For item 11D, the board will discuss topics for future board agendas. Would any board member like to discuss agenda ideas? Trustee Gerard.
I think it's already going to be put on, but I would like for the next meeting to have a discussion about the ACCBE organization, and if our board would be interested in joining.
Okay. Thank you for raising that again. So yes, so I think we will try to put it
Yes.
on the November 20th potentially. Does that sound right?
Yeah, would that be a discussion item?
I don't know that we know yet, so maybe we might need further clarification if we're going to
Yeah,
vote.
I can let you know. I should know within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. I think there might be an application form or something and
Right.
maybe no dues, but we're not sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other future agenda items anyone would like to propose? All right, there's no action to take on this item. Item 11E, board members will comment. Trustee Alvaro, would you like to start us off?
I just had a quick question and about the agenda item you just brought up, which is, they're having a webinar on a night I cannot attend. Are they going to be taping it so that we can look?
They
at
are
their-
going to tape it so
That's
that
what
you
I-
can watch it at another time.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess I should, well, maybe I should register and then say I'm not going to go. I just want to say a shout out, a thank you to Carlmont High School's Interact Club, which is a partnership with two Rotary clubs, actually, both San Mateo and Belmont, I think, Rotary clubs, and their club advisor, Adele Della Santina, because they chose as their project cleaning Poplar Beach, which is a mess. It is a disaster every time we have a busy weekend. It is just covered with trash. It happens to be not terribly far from where I am. And they decided that the Carmont kids like to come over and use that beach. And so therefore they would like to contribute by making that their project to clean up. So they've been over twice so far and done a great job of cleaning the beach. And I wanted to sort of shout out to them, thank them.
Oh, nice. All right, trustee Lempert. Okay, trustee Cannon.
Just two quick things. First of all, to congratulate the whole office and Nancy and the Personnel Commission on the reclassification effort. I know that's a huge thing, and I remember from 50 years ago what an emotional process that was in Jefferson School District and how important it was to all of the employees. So I'm very pleased for them and for the district, for the office that's done. And just to thank Bonnie Hanson for coming out tonight to give up an evening to come and say such great, gracious things about our staff. Was very nice of her.
Thank you. Trustee Camacho.
Thank you also to Bonnie Hanson. Those were very lovely words that I didn't give to her. So that was nice that she said them.
How much did you pay her?
The other thing that I want to congratulate the Community College District for their opening of their Coastside campus, which I attended last week in Half Moon Bay. Beautiful facility, 2 classrooms, administrative offices, right in the center of town-ish, right off the main drag. But super excited Coastside community for that opening. So I was glad to be there with them. And then I would just share, I came to this board meeting right after my first middle school band concert.
Ooh.
And I just wanted, sitting there listening to, first off, seeing the music instructor like conduct his orchestras or whatever they are, their bands. Those educators are phenomenal, incredible. But I think it's just another reflection point of the importance of the arts and of music programs, just to see it. Kids are always so inspiring when you see them do their thing and be creative. So I just shout out to all the music teachers in the county and that are doing amazing things with youth.
Very exciting.
That's so cool. Trustee Gerard.
Yes, thank you. Well, I really was impressed with our reports this evening. We had lots of information, and it's always wonderful to see our employees that do such a great job recognized. So I think that's really very special. I'm looking forward to touring our campuses tomorrow, and I think that should also be very interesting. And I just want to encourage any of our board members that haven't signed up for the webinar for ACCBE on Monday evening to please, please, please do so. We've been working really hard on it. And I think that you will receive a lot of great information. And if you don't, then you can ask questions and give input and let us know. So please, I know you all received an email from Jennifer with the information on it. So please sign up. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Torres.
Just very short, just very excited for tomorrow for our visit, and then also for Monday to get more information on ACCBE. Thank you.
Okay, and I just have a few things. I wanted to give a shout out to the San Mateo Foster City School District for their really deep dive into workforce housing and the Workforce Housing Committee that they've created this summer, their board created. I was going to be a part of that, but I have become busy during my days, so I'm not actually able to do it, but it's really exciting work. So I encourage everyone to keep their ears perked for what's going on. Also, Beverly and I believe Superintendent McGee have been going to the San Mateo Union High School District's Let's Talk series, which has been all focused on equity. And I have to attend a play at my school the night that that's being held, which the next one, which is the 4th of November. So if anyone is able to go, it's a really great group. They have a facilitator, a lot of great work's being done. So if anyone is free that evening, I assume that Trustee Gerard might be going but maybe not. I don't know. But if anyone else is free that night, if you need the information, if you haven't received it, let me know. I'll forward you the information. I also just wanted to quickly note, even though it's only October, that the Kent Awards are in May. And so we should all be, whether it's for our districts or for the county office, we should start thinking about whether we want to submit any applications. I'm actually helping to chair the Kent Awards this year. So I just wanted to put that out there. And there'll be official applications, of course, coming up. And for the Emily Garfield Award, which is the mental health related award, we're going to do a good focus on that this year. It's usually kind of folded in, but we want to highlight it. So I'm just saying it now so we can start thinking about it. And that is all. Okay. Item 12 is our adjournment. Our next regular meeting will take place on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 7 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned.